Hello, folks. This is Don Flemons, the American Songster, and I want to welcome you back to American Songster Radio on WSM in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to have another wonderful show today as we speak with one of the greatest songwriters and poets of all time, Eric Andersen. You've been on the top of my list for quite a while, Eric, so I'm just so glad that we could get together.
That's so nice of you. Thank you. Really nice.
I, of course, want to welcome you to American Songster Radio. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Wow, it's wonderful. I'm very honored to be on your show.
Well, you mentioned that the moment that we met at a show called The Cabinet of Wonders, just to fill folks at home in, hosted by the wonderful Wesley Stacy. And I had a chance to get Eric to sign my copy of About Changes and Things, and I even got to join him on singing Thirsty Boots, which was one of the honors of my life.
Whoa. Listen, I got to congratulate you for winning your Grammy. That's what I heard you won a Grammy.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah, I won one for traditional folk back in 2011, and then I got nominated for my album Black Cowboys over in 2018. And yes.
Congratulations.
Oh,
wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to get a chance to work with Smithsonian Folkways and get a chance to work with them. I guess, when I met you, I had a burning question in my mind, because one of the first albums I picked up, I believe, is your first Vanguard record. At the local record store, I picked up a copy of Today is a Highway, and your beautiful song to JCB had really moved me, and I had wanted to ask you about it, and you told me a beautiful story about it. Do you mind telling me a bit about what inspired Song to JCB and a little bit of that time that you were hanging out with J.C. Burris?
Yeah, well, what I can recall, let's see. I was playing at the Coffee Gallery, which is a club in North Beach, which is kind of like San Francisco's equivalent to MacDougal Street, or Bleecker and MacDougal. And the Coffee Gallery was kind of a storied venue because it was a big hangout for the Beats, Kerouac and Bob Donelon, and his friend from Lowell, and Ginsberg and Farrell and Getty, a lot of people. It wasn't far from the City Lights bookstore. And I had gotten a gig there. Actually, I was underage, and Howard Hessman, the comedian who, I think he had a TV show about a disc jockey. But Howard Hessman, he was the bartender, and he vouched for me, so I got a gig there. And I guess walking, I was living in Stinson Beach and driving in at that point to San Francisco to play this gig. I had a gig every Wednesday night or something like that. And walking from the cars, and I kept passing this guy who was playing in doorways and stuff. That was J.C., this great harmonica player, J.C. Burris. And we got to talking, and he had a big scar on his face, on his neck, and kind of scary looking. But he played the sweetest harmonica, and he worked with this guy named, I think, was Gregory, who played the boxes. They were together, and it turned out he couldn't play in clubs. He was kind of what they call 86 from every music venue and coffee house and on the circuit there in the streets. And so he ended up just playing on the streets. And so I ended up I bought my guitar. I'd start playing with him. So we just travel on from doorway to alley to street corner and stuff. And I'd take my guitar around. I'd just play backup, and he'd play the harmonica, and Gregory would play the box. He used to play a box, and they made drums. I think they're doing that now. People sitting on boxes and they're playing drums on them. But he was just playing his box, and it kind of worked. And JC, he drank a lot of wine from his big bottles. He liked wine. And I had the crazy idea that I was going to. I tried to get him in some clubs to come in and play with me and stuff like that. But everybody knew him. And he was just a scary, dangerous character, and nobody would let him in. So sometimes I'd do my gig, and he'd wait around for me outside the door, and afterwards we'd go and we'd play some more out in the streets. And then I'd take the along that back to Stinson Beach. I was living over the Tamalpais Mountain in Marin County, and I had the brilliant idea that I was going to sober him up. Mm-hmm. So I got him in the car, and we drove out to Stinson Beach, and he stayed at my place for a few days. And we were sitting on the beach, and too long, I said, George, we walked in the water a little bit and stuff like that, and he wasn't there too long. He says, where can I get a bottle? I got to get a bottle. So there was a tiny little package store that served as a grocery store and a package store in Stinson. This place was like no bigger than a seashell, this town. It was so small. And so I relented, of course. I mean, I wasn't going to argue with him. So he got a bottle. We went back down to the sand, and we sat in the sand in the sun. He started drinking, telling me stories about his, Georgia. And, he was I think the nephew of Sonny Terry. Mm-hmm. And as I recall, it's a long time ago, Tom.
Yeah, and he played the harmonica and the bones.
Oh yeah, he did that. He played the bones, and he taught me how to do. Well, the first thing he taught me is how to do the ham bone. Like how to play your legs and your knees, and your hands and your palms, and the back of your hands.
Yeah.
So he was teaching me that, and I learned that. And then there's a rhythm instrument. And then the second thing he taught me is how to kill a person with one hand. And you think, well, you're alone with this guy on a beach, and he's going to give you a lesson on how to do this, and he showed me how to do it.
Wow.
And I learned a little lesson from JC about how to do that. And it involves, your thumb and your hand, on someone's neck and hitting the right place with your thumb, and you can put them right out.
Wow. the lessons in life, that you got to know, that's
well, I don't know. He picked that up, and I think later he got a recording deal with, I don't know, was it Dennison or Chris Strockwitz or somebody who recorded him long after I left, I think.
Over on the Arhoolie. Yeah, on the Arhoolie level.
I think he made an album. Anyway, he was a great dear friend of mine, for those times I was living.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mary.
Yeah, and so I'd like to ask you a little bit about what now, because I think most people, when they think of songwriters, they think of songwriters that have been influenced by other songwriters that are writing music. And one of the things I found, especially when I was watching the Song Poet documentary, is that you came from a place of varied influences, where you had musicians like J.C. Burris around, but also you went out to San Francisco to meet the beat poets. And I would love for you to just, especially Lawrence Ferlinghetti, because he was with us until just recently.
Well, this is all taking place in San Francisco.
Yeah, and so
with J.C.
Because you've mentioned also.
He was a mentor that nobody could deal with, I guess. But he was the most influential mentor that I had, because he was playing the stuff that seemed the most real to me from all the things that were going around me, and because the folk scene is kind of a burgeoning, nascent situation. It was just kind of up and coming,
Yeah, because you've already mentioned beat poets and comedians within the context of also folk music being around. Maybe could you speak a little bit about how beat poetry sort of was a bridge and transition?
Yeah. Well, a little bit. I mean, the beats, it was like there were like two rails on the train, or two tracks long,
Oh. Okay.
And one was that the thing with J.C. and, the thing trying to, to play music, to play. And I just left home and threw caution to the wind, and, kept promising my parents I'd go back to school, and I never did. And went up to California, but I wanted to meet the beat poets, and another person I met there was David Meltzer, who was a poet and a friend of Carolyn Geddes, and he worked in City Lights, and through him I met a lot of people. And his wife Tina and him and me and Debbie Green, we formed a little group, a little folk group.
And were you playing mostly your own compositions then, or were these mostly folk songs of different sorts?
I guess they were just mainly folk songs. I don't think I had too much of my own material. Yeah, I had maybe a little, but I can't remember what I was doing back then. I was just, somehow I had something that I could get on a stage and sing through a microphone and play guitar.
Yeah, and because you're, of course, one of the legendary guitar and harmonica men of the folk revival. What was your inspiration to start playing in that style? Was it something with Woody Guthrie to start, or was because you've mentioned J.C. being a great harmonica player as well? Was Woody Guthrie your first start, or was there somebody else that made you decide?
Oh, I mean, I think I listened to calypso music. I listened to the Kingston Trio.
Oh, okay.
I listened to, the Weavers. I listened to, Woody Guthrie got filtered in there too. A whole bunch of stuff, and I just like to sing, and I had some kind of repertoire, and I would go up and sing, for about a half hour, 40 minutes or something with other people. And one of the other acts was this guy Dino Valenti, who wrote "Hey People, Let's Get Together."
The Youngbloods.
Love one another. Yeah,
Yeah.
The Youngbloods. Yeah, he was a writer, and Chet Hunter. He had another name. But anyway, he walked around saying about peace and love, and he walked around with like a Bowie knife strapped around his thigh, and he got popped for this. He was doing dope deals on the side, but he was scared. You think JC was scary, man? This guy was really, you didn't want him to look. You tried to avert his gaze,
I'll never.
You never wanted to, but he wrote a lot of famous songs, though, and I think he sold that song for like $400 to the manager of the Kingston Trio. That "Come On People, Let's Get Together" song.
Yeah.
But, he was an act. I mean, I didn't know much about his career till later, but I just knew him on the streets. He had a beautiful girlfriend a beautiful blonde who he was very protective of, who sang also, and she heard a song, something like "Light the Fire and Carry It to the People." She had this one great song that was beautiful, and she was there. And then Janis Joplin was playing on Thursday nights, and she'd drive her Vespa up to the window and by the door and come in and play.
Yeah, I mean that's again, you've mentioned several names that are now quite legendary within the rock field, and with Janis Joplin, a lot of people may not know that she was a folk singer and a blues singer beforehand with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, she was. She was living in the Haight. She came from Port Arthur, Texas. Mm-hmm. She gravitated up to San Francisco. But, it was a kind of a beautiful scene. It was like, it's an Italian neighborhood, like the Village, and it exuded that kind of warmth, neighborhood warmth and friendliness, and had a church, and a little park. And so, I mean, it was, and that's where the beats, and so this was the time there was kind of the crack between the hippies and the beats. Crack of time.
Yeah, that's.
But it was,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when Kennedy got killed, and I wrote this long song, this 26-minute recitative about the killing of Kennedy, and like kind of a Ulysses Joycean kind of song about that takes place in one day, called Beat Avenue, and that was one of the biggest takeaways from my time there. And then of course JC came out. That song JCB. I called the song to JC, but the record company didn't. They thought it would be some people would misinterpret some kind of religious thing. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So they threw the B in on the end just to avert confusion.
Oh,
I like the original. But
yeah, well, but that's a beautiful thing in terms of that you were always able to sort of synthesize a lot of those different sounds, and when I say sounds, I mean the phraseology and sort of the wordplay that's indicative of all those different eras, and that's something I've always really enjoyed about your writing. I guess maybe that's something I think would be a great thing to ask you about. When it comes to songwriting, are there things that you or maybe your contemporaries were doing or thinking about when it came to songwriting that you don't see as much now in modern songwriting? Because I'm imagining very different situations and different times, different influences and impetus to do whatever type of songs. Is there anything that you distinctively can think of that is from that little crack of time?
Well, you know, when I hit the stage there, you know, at the Coffee Gallery, that place. There's also a place down the street called Coffee and Confusion. So, you know, it was that scene, you know, the express. But the Coffee Gallery served beer. They served alcohol too, beer and wine, I think. It was a little looser than the clubs in New York. But, you know, I got up on stage wanting to be a songwriter, but I didn't have any songs. So I was just up there singing like they were mine. And but I must have had some songs because Tom Paxton drifted in one night, and he was playing in Berkeley. He drifted in, and he heard me. So I must have had some songs already because he said, "Look, man, come to New York. You can stay at my house." So I must have, but I can't remember exactly which songs they were. Because after I left San Francisco, that's when, of course, things started to flower, you know, like Song to JC and Come to My Bedside, the songs that were on my first album.
Absolutely, and
I must have been working on some of them. I must have had some of them already because Paxton, being a songwriter, he perked up to, my gigs. So.
Absolutely.
And, I don't know.
You know, and even one song I'm going to be playing for the show, which I feel is just such a telling performance, is the version of Plains of Nebraska that you do with Phil Oakes that you recorded for Broadside. There's such a love.
Yeah.
There's like a love and passion, and of course you recorded it for Today Is a Highway solo. But there's a love and passion in that performance. Could you tell me just a little bit about your friendship with Phil Oakes and what Phil did for you once you came out to New York? Because as you mentioned, Tom Paxton recommended you come out. You crashed on his couch for several months to get on your feet, and then you were immersed within this beautiful scene in New York. And
well, it was a lot more luxurious than that. I mean, Nebraska. Paxton he moved to England with his wife for a while, and he gave us the apartment. It was very nice in the village. So it wasn't we weren't quite crashing. It was a little better than that.
Oh, nice!
But we were kind of borrowing his place. But I mean, when I hitchhiked west, you know, from when I basically got thrown out of college, which is very strange. I'll tell you something very funny. Mm-hmm. But the first part, you know, going through Nebraska, and I just wrote this song and I played it for the people. At Broadside, you know, Gordon and Sis. Mm-hmm. I had lived with them for a while later, but and they liked that song a lot because they were from Oklahoma, and they were friends of Woody Guthrie. They were like very close, and also in the Almanac Singers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I got tossed out of college, and I got an email this summer. From the dean of the college. Uh-huh. You know, I got thrown out I was in pre-med and I lost interest and got interested in literature and music and stuff. And so I kind of, through some kind of motorcycle incident, I got thrown out of school, me and a couple other guys. And so I got a letter from the dean last summer. I was in the Canary Islands saying, "Hey, would you like to come to the college, come back and receive an honorary doctorate?"
Oh, wow.
For being the most accomplished dropout we've ever known. And the reason I got thrown out is because I had torn up the president's lawn with our motorcycles and the bushes and the shrubbery and the grass. So I thought it was a hoax. Tony, we're going in in May to get this honorary doctorate. It's very funny.
Oh, that's amazing.
And play, and maybe they'll give me a huge gardening bill. I don't know.
They might give you a new motorcycle as well, to commemorate the occasion.
Yeah. That's what I would really. Maybe that's what I should write into the deal. Yeah, because it kind of messed up my motorcycle. The spikes got broke, and that got a little muddy and a little dirty in the carburetor, and the spokes got broken. And he just gave me a good idea, Tom. I'm gonna negotiate this thing now. You got me going. Oh. But anyway, that's how I sailed out of school, and then I went west, to meet the beats and just to, sniff the air and see America, go across the country.
Yeah, and it eventually landed you in New York City. Now, how were you before going to New York? Were you how much did you know about New York City before going there? Was it sort of like a golden city at that time, or was it a just sort of a movement to a new scene and a new place for you?
Well, I mean, I knew there was a kind of singer-songwriter thing happening there. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was in Berkeley, and there was a New York Times, John Hammond was playing. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend owned a club called Cabal in Berkeley. And people like Mississippi John Hurt played there, Skip James, a lot of people that played in Cambridge at the Club 47 and in New York City were playing there. And even some people that didn't, like Lenny Bruce played there, people like that. And I wasn't good enough to play there. I mean, our little group played there, but I myself didn't play there. But I ended up with the owner, Debbie, who's in the movie.
Yeah.
But so it was, But New York, I saw this thing on our table, a New York Times article about John Hammond, and I said, "Geez, I'd like to get an article on the New York Times." So I figured that was happening, and I went to New York, and I did. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, with the great Robert Sultan, yeah.
I got to New York, but I was kind of scuffling, for a couple of years because I recorded an album, but I wasn't playing any gigs, and I didn't have any money, and I was just waiting for the record to come out, and it took a very long time. So what happened for me was, in my case, and I was living up the Broadside for a while. I was living on the East Side, and cooking for junkies and stuff like this. Just scuffling around, and sometimes the record company give me $20, something like that. And but all the nights I just get out of the street, in the McDougal Street, and go to the Gaslight and hear all these blues players, and they'd be there for 6 nights a week, and I just was killing time, so I could hear Skip James, Lightning Hopkins, Nance Lipscomb, all these incredible artists playing Sun House, playing for 1 week.
Wow!
So I'd go down every night and I'd sit at their knees and hear these guys firsthand, and that's how I learned. That was my graduate studies in music. It's how to get an audience, to compel an audience to follow it, listen to you with just an instrument and a voice. So that's where any magic I possess, I got it from there.
Wow, and because that is of course a very definitive part of your entire music career, is just the blending of voice and of guitar. Sometimes with the band, but always with your music. It always goes to the voice, the story, and the guitar, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a hypnotic, there's kind of a hypnotic spell you can. So I do confess. So I used to play. Sometimes I'd play too loud, thinking, you got to win them over. That was a mistake. Yeah, and I can tell you the proof of it was the wood being worn out under the strings. From from the flat pick playing. So it took me a while. I had to get over that hump. Even though I'd heard all this stuff, I didn't know it would apply to me. So that's like a technical thing.
Absolutely.
When you realize that if you play softer, the softer you get, the more they lean in to listen.
See, that's words from the wise right here with Eric Andersen. That's a wonderful. It's a wonderful epiphany when you find that you can do that. It's amazing to hear your story, because having been inspired by your stuff really early on when I was out in Arizona, I found copies of your old records, and I relate to a lot of the things you're talking about. You know, I started to.
Oh, really? Wow.
I started to go out to the coffee houses when I was 17, 18 years old, and when I was watching the documentary, I saw a lot of parallels to the types of experiences we had, and then also when I went out to North Carolina, I started working with a lot of folks out there, and that was sort of my education.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You know, over working with a lot of the blues singers, and that's a beautiful thing. You know.
Yeah.
One song I wanted to play on the radio was one of your songs, "The Hustler," from "Bout Changes and Things," and this one is one that you mentioned on the notes that this is calling out people who bum cigarettes from Joan Baez, knowing that she doesn't smoke, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit about "The Hustler" as a song, and again, you know, in a world where people have rap and hip hop now, I feel like this. I always tell people this is Eric Andersen's rap song right here. It has such a flow and so many images strung together on it. I would just love to just pick your brain on "The Hustler" a bit, kind of thinking about. You know, I think this is more of a writing question. You know, like when you're bringing images together in your songwriting, what are some of the things that you've learned over time? And this can be not just "The Hustler," but just over time in general as a songwriter. What's something that drives you from one image to another? Or how do images connect scenes together in songwriting for you when you're writing it?
Geez, that's a good question, because, you know, I think with writing, how shall I explain it? Writing is kind of to me, it's a mysterious process. You kind of you get into kind of a trance, and you think, and the things start to you, and you start putting them down. Because lots of times I write the lyrics first. You know, it's ideal if you can get them together. I should actually try to get the music first and not the lyrics, but. In my case, it's always seemed to be the words, but it's a mysterious process. And when you're doing it, you think, "Hey, man, I could tell anybody how to do this. It's so simple, it's ridiculous." And then you get the thing written, and then the spell snaps, and you think, "What happened?" You know. And you don't remember a thing. It's like you come out of a dream, and like a dream, you know, kind of swirls around the basin, and it just disappears. It's a very mysterious process for me. It's hard to describe.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job of describing it right then. That was just, again, beautiful poetry in of itself, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, I got this thing. I'll read you something I've just been doing. It's called "Love is a Sacred Thing," and it's like, looking across the broken plain from this barren range, where half-dead armies died of thirst, left to languish in the rain. A lone general rode, looking for his heart, a telltale signal or a sign. Everything was indecipherable. He looked around but couldn't find. His love ain't looking for no diamond crowns or the empire rules of kings. The only rule is the heart that feels, because love is a sacred thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's
the Salt and Waves is.
Oh, there's more. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll give you just a little taster. The Sultan waved his magic wand and shook his magic rug. His life was a ton of harems without an ounce of love. His sword was carving mountains, digging deep for gold and jewels. All he got was a pile of stones and a lot of broken tools. Love ain't weighed by emeralds or sapphire ruby rings. It's never measured out in gold, because love is a sacred thing. The girl waved to the castle wall while floating down the stream, Ophelia waiting for a word. She knew what it would mean. While Hamlet paced the ramparts, a panther in his throat, a study of perfect muteness, his dreams became a moat. Love can make you feel the splendor of being born with wings. When the power of the heart's at play, then love is a sacred thing. That's something I'm toying with.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Writing some stuff for a new album.
Oh, that's wonderful. And a special premiere here on American Songster Radio from some beautiful contemporary modern work from Eric Andersen. And it's beautiful the way that one thing that in the documentary that so many people mention is how well read you are as a writer on a variety of different subjects. Maybe just speak a little bit of now when it comes to bringing information into your mind for it to come out in poetry. How important is that? How important is it to be as well read as possible for you?
Well, I mean, you kind of go, you find your own river with literature and words. I think, for example, like I just got a brand new book about Keats. He's a poet, English poet who died when he was 25. I never could get into Keats. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was too floral for me, John Keats. But he wrote great stuff. But this book is kind of his life in 9 poems. So I'm trying to get through. I'm just checking it out because writers, to me, the ones that got to me are people like Baudelaire or Rimbaud or Garcia Lorca. Those kind of people.
Oh. Yeah.
But I just and Byron too. I did an album about Byron using his lyrics, and I'm working on an album about Garcia Lorca, using his lyrics for songs, and co-writing on some of the songs. The lyrics called Deep Song, Andalusian gypsy music, that he was kind of an expert at. But he got killed by the fascists, in 1936. Mm-hmm. Poets didn't really have a long life, I mean, Byron tried to liberate Greece from the Turks, in 1826 or something, and he died of fever. He was only 36 years old. Rimbaud died, he was like 35, but he quit writing when he was 19 or 20. Baudelaire didn't fare too well, died of syphilis. I mean, Keats died when he was 25. So, I mean, and Shelley, he drowned in a boat off the coast of Italy. Yeah. Shelley said, Shelley said the poets are the unelected legislatures of the world. Poets are the unelected legislators of the world.
And I can believe that wholesale. And it's amazing. You've laid out such a list of amazing writers here. I hope everyone will take a moment to take out a piece of paper and write down some of these names of Arthur Rimbaud and also Federico Lorca and also Lord Byron as well. And Eric mentioned that back in 2017 he did a wonderful album called Mingle with the Universe, The Worlds of Lord Byron, where Eric is actually revisiting some of Lord Byron's poetry, putting it to music, and if I heard you right, adapting it slightly to fit your own needs as a song.
Yeah, that's true. He was the first Lennon and McCartney. All his stuff everything he wrote was a song. but nobody picked up on it.
Huh. When
so
did you?
They picked up on Robert Burns, the Scottish poet.
Mm-hmm.
Old Lang Syne and some of his stuff. And to me, most of his stuff's indecipherable. It's strange. It's funny. The English language poets are the most difficult for me to grasp, except for, of course, later on there's T.S. Eliot and Charles Bukowski's a beautiful poet.
Oh yeah,
and so is Kerouac.
Oh yeah, and Kerouac.
Yeah, Kerouac.
Yeah, are there any?
And of course, Allen Ginsberg. Gregory Corso is a great poet. I love Gregory Corso. So these are the things that kind of, these are my little invisible angels that sit on my shoulders and, coax me along to try to be a good songwriter.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Again, when I saw the song poet, it actually kind of blew me away because from the very beginning, when I first heard your music, there was a certain lyricism to it that was reminiscent of the great poets, and I feel so elated that you are continuing to make wonderful music and wonderful songs, whether they're yours wholesale or even revisiting. I mean, even in the course of your career too, you've revisited your classic era of the 1960s with your wonderful Great American Song series, the 2 CDs that you produced, where you actually reanalyzed some of your contemporaries, and including a wonderful cover of "When I'm Gone" from Phil Oakes. I mean, you've done some you've just done some amazing work when it comes to looking at yourself and the environment around you that helped create part of your legacy, as well as being able to reinterpret it again. I think it's just wonderful. And then, of course, there are classic albums like You Can't Relive the Past, which also fits right in alongside your philosophy. You're always moving forward, never necessarily moving backwards in your writing. And maybe if you could speak a little bit of that as well.
Well, that album, I mean, was a strange, kind of a beautiful, strange album. That the title song I wrote and did with Lou Reed, of all people. But he was probably the greatest. Lou Reed was probably the great folk singer of New York City. And we talked about that sometimes. And he said every time he tried to talk about being like a folk singer, and he wasn't saying it tongue in cheek, because he wrote about New York like he was more of a folk singer than Pete Seeger, because he wrote. He talked the talk, walked the walk. He lived the life of New York City, and he wrote about it. That's the folk world he knew. New York City.
Yeah. He
wasn't eclectic like, Pete Seeger learning a song from South Africa or Appalachia. Wonderful that he was as a collector, or a song from a Negro spiritual or something, or, that Seeger collected all these things, and he was the purveyor. But Lou Reed, in reality, was more of an authentic folk singer like Woody Guthrie was in Oklahoma, in a way. Because of New York, he said, and he tried to tell people in the press about that angle, You follow me?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So, and they just told him basically to shut up. We don't want to hear about that. We want to hear about people throwing hypodermic needles at your shows and when you were playing Rome or something. I mean, it's the critics, the rock critics. So, I mean, it's, so that's, but I also got a chance to go down to Mississippi and record with people down at, the Fat Possum people. So half the album's recorded down there. We didn't even use a bass, just guitars and a drum with no tom. Maybe I don't think there's a tom drum, just a hi-hat. There's just a hi-hat and a snare and a bass drum. And it worked, because people down Mississippi, they couldn't afford basses. They could afford a stand-up bass, and also the issues of electricity, having an electric bass, It wasn't until people got to Chicago where they could plug in from Mississippi.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this has been really fascinating to hear in the context of when most people hear you as a folk music or folk-based singer-songwriter. I hear you speaking a lot about the blues as a huge influence in sort of the underpinnings of your musical journey. What was the first blues that you heard? What was the first one that you're really conscious that this is the great music when it comes to the blues?
I think one thing was Man's Lipscomb, How Long?
Yeah.
And I think Rocky Mountain, the Lightning Hopkins stuff.
Nice.
Here, because I never had a lot of records or anything, so I mean everything I heard was live. I mean it was emanating from a stage, or somewhere something like that. So Lightning Hopkins was a huge. And he also was a big influence on Townes. And Townes, they both lived near each other. Lightning was from Houston, and Townes was from Fort Worth, Dallas, and Houston too. So I mean, Lightning Hopkins was somebody who seemed to reach songwriters like me or Townes Van Zandt. I know that.
Well, since you've mentioned Townes by name, do you mind just maybe sharing a memory that you have of Townes Van Zandt, and just sort of a moment where I'm going to say more of like what would be something interesting that people would find that are fans of Townes that you know about that other people might not know, or a fun memory about that? Just because, again, for folks at home, I could sit with Eric and list off a name of thousands of musicians who have been influential over the years, and Eric has pictures of them and has hung with them and partied with them in the best types of ways. But let's get back to Townes a little bit. Is there a particular memory that sticks out in your mind of Townes Van Zandt?
Well, I mean, Townes stayed with me when he came to New York or North, and I'd stay with him down in Austin and Nashville. We were kind of twin figures in a way. I don't know. We were both kind of tall and lanky, and we just had this kind of connection. And he, of course, he had recorded. I'm not recorded, but he had sung when he started out doing song "Violets of Dawn." He loved that song. And him and Gary Clark before I knew them. But Townes had, things that happened with Townes were very, very funny, unique. For example, we were driving through Texas, and I noticed in Texas we were going to the Kerrville Festival, and we were in the car. I was driving, and I noticed there were a lot of 7-Elevens in Texas. So just as a joke, I sort of said, well, Townes, let me ask you something. Are there more handguns in Texas or more 7-Elevens? And he sort of chortled and said, well, more handguns, of course, because not everyone can afford their own 7-Eleven. That's Townes. Things like that, or you see a palmetto bug, and which look like huge cockroaches. You find them down south sometimes. And what's that, Townes? And he says, well, that's a palmetto bug. And he said, my daddy, told me that if you don't have palmetto bugs in your house, that means you can't afford to feed them. But those are the two afford jokes. But I mean, he always had these really quirky. We wrote 4 songs together, and I'm going to do them at this festival in Italy coming up in about 3 weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But that's also on the Can't Relive the Past album that you cited before. But Townes was, he was just a great, great soul, and very funny. Very droll.
Oh, that's amazing. It's funny with you mentioning Lou Reed. Actually, I was reminded of a funny story you had told me about Leonard Cohen. Do you mind telling that story about Leonard Cohen proclaiming that you were the biggest influence on him of all time, and then Lou Reed telling you that he told you the exact same story? Could you give a little little bit of that story?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was living at the Landmark Hotel, where Janis Joplin actually died, but it was a musician hangout. And Leonard Cohen came and sat next to me at the pool. I was just sitting there with my legs in the water, and he came and rolled up his trousers and sat down next to me, and then proceeded to tell me that this is like 1967. That Violets of Dawn was the song that got him to write songs. And I was aware of his work, his poetry work. You know, he had published poetry in Canada with a publisher named McClellan and Stewart. And I also knew his, I would get to know Irving Layton, who was his mentor, and also wrote the album notes for Blue River, like a poem called There Were No Signs. I never met Leonard Cohen. So he's telling me this, and that was very nice. So later I was having dinner before Leonard got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was like in 2000-something. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Lou the story about Leonard Cohen and at the swimming pool and Violets of Dawn. And Lou listened, and I said, and he didn't say anything. And I looked, and I said, what is it? Why? He was like stroking his chin. He said, it's funny. I saw Leonard last week, and he told me the same thing about Walk on the Wild Side or something. So, I mean, it just goes to prove that poets are the greatest liars in the world. But, I mean, of course, there was a separation of many years, but we don't know how many other writers he told that story to. You were the greatest, you were the greatest thing since my mother's milk or something. But he was a droll. Leonard Cohen was a very droll. He was the funniest songwriter of all of them, of everybody, in terms of bringing a smile to your soul. He was really funny. And everybody thinks he's so funereal.
Well, can you give a little example of this? Because, of course, again, like as a younger person, when you see the pictures of Leonard Cohen, he seems extremely serious. He doesn't seem like he could crack a joke necessarily from just a picture. But do you have maybe a small memory in your mind beside that one that may that sticks out as one of those funny little things about Leonard Cohen?
I mean, in his music, if you think you're talking about, you've had somebody love it, you could put a meter on your bed, stuff like this. I mean, he's extremely droll. I mean, he put his humor into his music, into his songs, I think, more than anybody else. Yeah. In terms of a personal thing, I'm trying to think.
Well, we don't.
He just had sarcastic. He had a very dark droll side. I'm trying to remember. There were some things that I remember the David Blues Memorial in New York. Leonard read something about how David was his concert stages and halls were the kitchens and dining rooms of people's houses. And we all marched down to a bar and drank tequila, and then went to David's wife's their new loft that David never slept in because he had died. David Blue. I don't know if you know his work and all of that.
Oh, sure.
David Blue is a close friend. Yep. He was a very good friend of ours, all of ours, and Leonard pulls out a poem at the house. And there's this sort of beautiful blonde in there, and Leonard pulls out this poem and starts reading it. I remembered for a while. I remembered what it was. It was like Venus and something. I mean, it was just this poem. He said, "Oh, I just wrote this today on the way down to the memorial." Pulls it out and reads it. And later on, I told Joni Mitchell the story, and Joni said, "Oh man, he read that poem to me like 30 years ago." I mean, so to use a poem to pick up a, so I mean, it's funny stuff. Oh, it's funny stuff.
It was
how low, how such a high mind can stoop so low.
It's amazing, and again, just reminding.
And I think he picked her. I think he picked her up. I think he succeeded, not just on the basis of words.
Wow.
I guess it depends on like the degree of sincerity. If you lie, you got to really make it big. You got to make it really good.
Oh,
the bigger the better.
That's hilarious. And of course, you mentioned Joni Mitchell, another great friend of yours. She's been getting a lot of acclaim in this past year.
Oh yeah.
And how early on did you meet Joni Mitchell? And then is there a particular moment that you can think of in your mind that defines something about Joni Mitchell that, again, other people here on American Songster Radio may not have heard?
Well, we intersected, I think, 1965 or 6 in Detroit. She was married to Chuck Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And they were living in Detroit, and they were playing at this place called the Checkmate in Detroit, and I was playing there for a week. In those days, see, this is the thing that I don't know if you know about, Dom, because I don't know if this is I don't know if this falls into the realm of your experience. Mm-hmm. Way back when, Miles Davis, Mingus, everybody, Whitney Hopkins, myself, everybody played gigs for a week. They'd go to a club and play for a week.
Oh, man.
Not just a single night and move on to the next gig. For a week, 6 days. You moved into a city. So anyway, I went to Checkmate in Detroit, and I went to her house, invited up there, and she was struggling with playing guitar. She didn't like playing traditional chords, F chords and stuff, which I can understand. Mm-hmm. It can be a pain. It can really be a pain, to try to learn an F chord, for example. Mm-hmm. People struggle. She hated it, so I taught her apparently her first open tunings, G tuning and E tuning and D tuning, those 3. Oh. And from there, she just never played. She never played. What is it? Traditional chords or tunings, or she just always tuned her guitar.
Wow, that's amazing.
And invented. She invented the tunings from there, But I guess I was the first one to show her the tunings. This was in '65, and she became a very good storyteller because you're standing up there singing songs in different tunings. She had to retune the guitar all the time into a new tuning, when she was doing shows when she was starting off. So told me she became a very good storyteller. Go figure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like if there was a comment that years ago I saw Jeff Moldauer and Jim Kweskin in concert, and Jeff had mentioned,
I love Jim Kweskin. I love Jim Kweskin. I mean, and Moldauer too. Kweskin's one of the great American. He's like Chevrolet or Ford or something. I mean, he's just one of the great. Coca-Cola. I mean, he's just like a incredible repository of, and he can really perform it, of music. It's incredible. This canon, it's amazing. I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, but again, Jim Kweskin is always a treat. But yeah, Jeff had mentioned at one point when they were playing, he said, everybody's got electric tuners nowadays. He said, maybe I think the 60s would have been half as long if we had had electric tuners for all the tuning that we had to do on stage.
And yeah, he's right, man.
It sounds like Joni had quite a, well, she didn't have, I guess she didn't have 2 guitars to kind of switch them off, just one that she had to plow through. And
yeah, she had to retune all the strings, because she was inventing tunings.
Oh, wow.
I think she invented 100 tunings or something, 110 tunings.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. But
and I saw her in New York at the Fez. It was it's like 4 stories down in a club, way down, man, and down. They had to climb stairs down. She played this gig, and somebody, I think Roland or something, invented a guitar for her where she could just press a button and switch the tunings and just play the strings like she'd normally play them in that tuning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was an amazing invention, actually. And she just played with a drummer, this great guy from New Orleans, this drummer. and did this gig. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is Shop Talk. This is your Shop Talk show.
Oh, yeah. Well, these are all things that are very interesting because nowadays we have so much technology. We have guitars that are set up in a certain way with the anticipation that folk songs will be played on them, or that you have you have enough technology to get you tuned up, or I think about my friend Mike Seeger. Before he had passed away,
I love Mike Seeger. Man, I miss him every day.
One of the things Mike had going for him in terms of technology that made me laugh was he had a device called the Slow Downer, and toward the end.
What's that?
It was like an application that would allow him to slow down a recording without changing the key or the pitch. And so he was
really,
because he kept telling me, all the time when I've been learning all these old time songs, I had to put my finger on the record to figure out all the licks. And so it was a thing that he had going for a while, but it made me laugh to think about that until, I don't know, for 50 years he had been putting his finger on the record to get all the licks, and then all of a sudden there's a little device that does it all for him. So he was really proud of himself that he had this thing so he could transcribe some of his numbers down. But was it like a one-off device or something? It was something or other. He had it on his computer, and he could plug in whatever recording he wants so that he could get it in there. I'm sure they now have a fancier version of it now, but it's kind of funny to think of that new technology coming around. I never heard of that, because to modulate without changing the tune, just changing the tempo, or changing the speed, that would be fascinating for every recording studio in the world. Oh, yeah, and so that was something that was little technological advances that it really were changing the way that Mike was thinking about handling music. It actually got me thinking of another thing that we had talked about at one point or another. Just because nowadays we're so used to streaming and we're used to music being unlimited when it comes to an album, I remember at one point we had a conversation. I was asking you about the number of verses that you might put into a song, and you had mentioned that the advent of the long-playing record was a huge factor in the writing of songs. And because, again, I think you may have mentioned that similar to the way that jazz was doing the same type of thing. When the long-playing record came out, all of a sudden you weren't limited to 3.5 minutes. But you had mentioned that in terms of songwriting, that was something that you all were very conscious of, knowing that you had a maximum of 26 minutes aside to work with certain songs. Yeah, because because like Miles Davis, when he played when Miles played with Charlie Parker, they had to keep those things short. It was really like super condensed poetry. They had to keep solos and stuff really short to get it under a certain amount of time, 3 minutes or something, 4 minutes. They had to really pack it on. With the LP, then jazz people, they could really stretch out. Like people like Coltrane and Miles, or Cannibal Adderley, it's like they could take long solos, Yeah. And that got picked up by, of course, that was the thing, the singer-songwriter movement, The LP made a huge difference, because I remember walking down the street. I had four verses to Violets of Dawn, and I was reciting it to Phil, like reading it to him on the street, and Phil Oakes. And Phil says, I love it and everything, it's great and everything, blah, 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 but it's too short. Now, and you think about the Brill Building and pop music, somebody walking down the street, and the thing is, it's too short. Like, it lost it never gained its credibility or its validity because it's too short. So I went back to, I dreamed a fifth verse, and then it was fine. Oh. But the LP was a huge thing, and now it's like, you can, with streaming, I guess you could write a 30-minute song and stream it, right? I've had to use
it's embarrassing, Spotify and Apple Music, to go back to my songs to learn them because I don't have the CDs or I don't have the albums in my house. I don't have any of my CDs.
Oh, that's amazing. So streaming has allowed you to kind of look, because again, I'm going to mention this to everybody as well. Now through streaming, you can check out all of his catalog on streaming now, and it's beautiful to be able to watch the entire trajectory of Eric Andersen's career. But that's even amazing. Eric Andersen himself is checking out his own catalog, so by recommendation of Eric Andersen,
I have to go to Spotify or Apple Music to find an old, to relearn it, because I don't do it anymore, because I don't have the albums and I don't remember exactly how it went. So I have to go there and listen to it to relearn it. Is that embarrassing?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say though, Eric, how many songs would you say that you've written? Because I mean, it is actually relative to the number that you've put out, though.
I don't know. I don't really count them. It's hard to say. I never took on that task of how many songs I've written. But I mean, I'd have to go to my publishing. I don't know, some hundreds, maybe a couple hundred.
You know, one of the beautiful parts of the song poet that starts out the entire documentary is there are these beautiful scenes where they're laying out all of your notebooks from over the years. And at first it just looks like a pile of notebooks. But then as it continues forward, the scene shows a pile of notebooks that actually fills up the entire screen, which again is very inspirational for anyone that's interested in the craft of songwriting. Because that, I mean, you've kept it up, and then two, I was so blown away to see how much of the archives you had kept when it came to correspondence and letters and different writing that you've kept at your disposal in one form or another. It was really amazing.
We got like 12,000 things in storage, and not even over here in Europe. I mean, which has been archived by an Englishman, a guy from London, who's in the movie actually, Ian, the guy who's narrating at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And all the music stuff is in the States, in New York City, and at the filmmaker's house.
Wow.
Cassettes, shows, all these, master tapes, all these things. That's like all the music's in the States, and all the writing stuff's over here. So I don't know. The Guthrie Center wanted it, but I wasn't giving it away. So.
Oh, okay.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
They have Phil Oakes and Tom Paxton, but I wasn't donating it to them.
Yeah, that's the Woody Guthrie Center over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they're
right.
They're bringing everything, trying to bring as they call them, Woody's kids home over there, and but yeah, it's I mean, it's amazing. So even from the documentary, we're just only seeing a small slice of what you've got available as a whole.
Yeah, the documentary is it's like the tip of the iceberg of all this stuff. They don't have anything about JC. They don't, there's just too much. You can only make a movie for 2 hours. But it's going to be on PBS on demand for 2 more years.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
public television.
Because I mean, it is a real revelation, especially some of the early footage as well. I mean, just to see that beautiful old footage of you singing "My Land Is a Good Land." I mean, what was it? What was it like to see that back? Because was that something that you had available, or was that something that they tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we found this in the archives"? Was it what type of way was it?
Well, in the film, I'm 95 or 98% of stuff I'd never seen before. I mean, I sat in the theater like everybody else, and I looked and said, "What's this? What's that?" I'd never seen it before. And a lot of the film is stuff I had shot myself, undeveloped Super 8s that they developed at Eastman Kodak, and put in the movie. Some of the footage were things that were from my just I was playing around with a Super 8 movie camera. So a lot of those things in the movie were from me.
Wow.
You know, and things that I'd never seen because they were never developed. They took them to the filmmakers from Buffalo and Eastman Kodak's in Rochester, which is like, you know, like Wilmington, Washington or something.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I
So
guess
it was there.
Well,
Yeah.
in some ways, it's really interesting to hear you mention that as well. How conscious were you as you were moving through these various scenes? How conscious were you about documenting? Because was it something that was something you were doing, you know, par and parcel for everything, or was it something where you realized over time, oh, I should get some type of documentation for what I'm doing at that current moment?
No, it's just like the passion. It's the passion at the time, the passion of the moment. Then you move on, and you forget about it. You know, just because somehow it got accumulated. You know, and gathered up. All the veils were gathered up, and it turned into a gown of some kind of reality. And I don't know. It's strange, you know. But I mean, I'm glad that PBS is going to keep it going for a couple more years. That's great.
Yeah.
But back to the songwriting thing for a moment.
Sure.
You know, every time I start a song, I don't know how it is for you, but it's like starting all over again. It's just like at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like my first song. I don't have any, no formulas, no craft things, no tricks, no structures, no diagram, no. It's just starting over every single song.
I can relate to that.
Full disclosure. Full disclosure.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might think about beforehand is maybe I might think about what type of song I'm looking at, but I tend to start with the words as well and try to figure out what's going to be the strongest sentiment that I'm trying to write, and then I try to find a style to fit with it most of the time nowadays. You know, but I definitely feel that same way where. Yeah, it's always about starting over. It's almost a reckoning that if said song is the first song someone else hears, it's the first song for me as well. You know, it has to come from a place of the unknown and the mystery. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, where you get into a trance and you start finding your pathway. Like I recently was.
Well, you almost feel like it's a visitation. You know, it's just kind of like trickling through you, and you just become a stenographer, like a court stenographer or something. You're just taking dictation. You just write it down. It's coming from somewhere else, and you're just the one writing it down. It's always been there, and it just found you, and it goes down, and you write it down. Something already existed.
And when I'm hearing you talking about songwriting, I'm hearing the same type of thing. Like it's like impressionistic painting when you have a scene and you want to.
One time I was taking a train through Wales.
Uh-huh.
I'd never been to Wales, and the train was coming from an airport, Manchester Airport, and we're going to Wales, someplace in Wales. And it was, flew all night. There was a kind of a sunny day, and Wales started to get hilly, like hills and little dips and valleys. And I looked out the window, and the train was kind of on an incline going up. I was just sitting by the window looking out bleary-eyed from a flight. And I saw the most amazing thing. Down below in a valley, a little valley, where was a flock of white sheep, divided in two, one on one side of the grass and one further away on the other side. And in the middle was one black sheep, just alone, while all the other sheep were white. It was just alone, like in the middle between these two groups. And there was like space between them, And I'm saying, what is this? And then there was a rainbow that was hitting the first knoll over the top of a hill, between a hill and a mountain, Whatever, is there a word for it?
Oh, that is.
So this rainbow came and was just coming right down because it had rained, England, the weather, it was like, one street's raining and the other street the sun is shining. It was that kind of thing, the mix-up of rain and sun.
Yeah.
And there was a rainbow. And so I had this image called Black Sheep and the Rainbow. But I never could get a song out of it. If you want it, you can have it. But I never could. I mean, I've carried this thing around for years, this image, and thinking, there's a song in there.
Oh, man.
But I never could do it.
A black sheep and a rainbow. Huh.
Yeah. But the image was this sort of green, this beautiful green, little dip, valley kind of thing.
Yeah.
Somebody's farm. But one flock on one side and one flock on another. In the middle was in between them both. At that image, there was, 40 seconds?
Yeah.
Was one black sheep. Go figure.
Oh, yeah, and that's beautiful. So it's like, and
but then the rainbow came. And everything was green and lush. It was like Wales.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to make a note of that
Beautiful
right there
place.
And see.
Beautiful place, Wales.
Absolutely. Oh boy, and Eric, I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours. I mean, we haven't even talked about. I mean, you got to know Andy Warhol. You are.
Yeah.
I mean, you've.
Well, I made a movie, and I made a movie for Warhol, and we were both from Pittsburgh, and I found out later I was the only one he ever gave a painting to, Marlon Brando from the Wild Bunch.
Oh wow!
I think it's now in the Warhol Museum or something. I don't have it anymore. Yeah. What was that? What was that? What else was on your list?
Oh, I mean, I'm just kind of rolling with it, just knowing your connection to a lot of folks. We talked about Janis Joplin a little bit. I mean, is there maybe if we could revisit one more time with her, and maybe because one of the things that I don't know if people are as aware of is the wonderful movie Festival Express, in which you were part of this amazing tour, which was Janis and the Dead, and I believe the band was there as well.
Buddy Guy.
And and Buddy Guy as well was on that tour.
The Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Ian and Sylvia. I think I was the only, for the whole tour, I was the only acoustic act.
Yeah, how did that come
Which
about?
Which was very bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, one time I was playing with the Byrds, and I felt very insecure, and they had an English sound man on the road. And the guy was so sweet. He said, look, Eric, don't worry about this. I mean, I know you feel alone and you feel naked up there on stage alone. And the Byrds had Clarence White and all the, incredible group, right? Mm-hmm. Chris Hillman, all these people. He says, all you got to remember, just do what you do. Just sing your songs. I'm running the sound. All we got to do is fill the speakers. And we can make it as big a sound as the Byrds. Mm. And I never forgot that. All we got to do is fill the speakers. And the crowd it's going to be as intense as it was if they were hearing a band. And that was the most brilliant thing I ever heard.
Wow.
Regarding sound.
Wow, that's amazing. And also you're opening up.
Just turn me up.
Yeah.
Just turn me up and fill it. In the hall, in the stadium, or it was not a. So anyway, I think the same thing happened on the Festival Express. The sound people just, they just jacked me up, right? So I was right in people's stomachs with sound, I think,
Yeah.
But that was a good tour. Hey, but you know what? Also we should mention, there's this album that's coming out of my songs. People doing my songs. It's like 3 CDs, and I know you're on it. You did a beautiful thing with. Hey, by the way, I'd like to hear your other version of JCB of my song. Oh. I heard the one, but I didn't hear the other. But maybe your manager Jeff or somebody could shoot it over to me. I'd like to hear it. I don't know what the difference could be, but I guess there is a difference.
Yeah, there's.
And
mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely.
Go on. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. We can definitely send that your way, and yeah, like is there a title yet for the new tribute CD? Eric's mentioning a 3 CD set of of covers of his songs from a variety of artists, and I did a version of his songs.
Mostly songwriters.
Mostly songwriters. Mm-hmm.
Doing the songs. And it's very beautiful. Some of the songs. They got 46 artists or something. I don't know.
Wow. I mean, that's...
And there's 3 CDs, and it's quite a few songs, but mainly, songwriters are doing it who, I guess, tuned into my writing and stuff. But it should be coming out in the summer, I think in August. And the title, I think, what's the title? Maybe they're going to use it like tribute to a song poet or something like that. The songs of Eric Andersen.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Oh, great. That's going to be wonderful. Yeah, I hadn't heard the working title or the title for it yet. And yeah, just being a part of it, it's a beautiful 3 CD set of interpretations of Eric's songs and lyrics by 46 different songwriters. I mean, I did Song to JCB, and I mean, for me, one of the things, once I started to listen to J.C. Burris's recordings, I realized, having been in North Carolina and really learned a lot of that Piedmont blues style, I found that I found that the rhythm of the lyrics matched with the phrases that J.C. would sing in his blues, and I found it really interesting that you were able to capture some aspect of his tone,
wow,
especially when so with the songs like the hand jive and some of the slow blues, there was a lot of that sort of mixed in with the lyrics, and so I kind of I rearranged it so it would be kind of like a Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry number, and I even did some bones and ham bone to go with it. The second one,
did you put there's a harmonica?
Oh, you know it. I put some harmonica in there and got a little of my tried to get my best JC / Sonny Terry going on to kind of play and get the inner workings next to it. You have such a beautiful way of describing, JC, and particularly the one where I'm going to tell you about one time when JC said, "Let me tell you about my shoes. They walked with Pete Seeger and Sonny Terry too, trying to earn a living and trying to play the blues. I guess them souls are getting thin now, and I guess mine is too," which I think is just what a beautiful line. And
thank you.
Absolutely. But Eric, sadly enough, we're starting to run out of time. I can't thank you enough, Eric Andersen, for being on American Songster Radio with us.
Well, also, mention this tribute album, because we got people on there. I think, we got Mary Chapin Carpenter and Richard Shindell, and the ones I'm trying to remember here. Willie Nile is doing something, Joyce Anderson, and you got your August Self, and there's Linda Ronstadt is doing one tune, and Jones is doing Thirsty Boots, a beautiful version of Thirsty Boots.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's got a lot of, soulful. Lucy Kaplansky. God, I don't have the list in front of me, but because I'm not doing this album. They're my songs, but there's a lot of great people, a lot of great performances on it.
And Eric, once again, it's been a pleasure to have you on American Songster Radio. Safe travels out there.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, being on your show means the world to me. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Eric Andersen there, and let's give him one more round of applause from the broadcasting station to say thank you again, Eric Andersen, for all that you do, and please keep it going. Keep the dream alive, please. Well, folks, I can't thank Eric Andersen enough for being on the American Songster Radio show. It's been a pleasure to get to know him more and share some of his music that's changed my life. Thank you all for listening to American Songster Radio Season 3. I wanted to share with you all that this is the very last episode for this season, but the good news is that we start up Season 4 next month beginning on January 24th. Make sure to stay tuned because I have a very special announcement that I'll be sharing at the beginning of the new year, and you won't want to miss it. Until then, you can stream all the episodes online at WSM.com, and you can listen to the full-length interviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also find special curated playlists that feature all of the musicians and artists that I've talked to on Season 3, and you can find those on Spotify under the American Songster Radio banner. And I also just wanted to send a special shout out to all of my friends who joined me on Season 3 of American Songster Radio. It's been so wonderful to get a chance to talk to Bobby Rush, Mickey Guyton, Billy Strings, Steve Martin, my wife Ania Kennard, Branford Marcellus, and of course Eric Andersen this season. And also this season wouldn't be made possible without my wonderful team at WSM, including J.P. Tennell and Zach Bennett, along with producers Vania Kennard and Jeff D'Elia. Also, Season 3 was generously sponsored by Elderly Instruments in Lansing, Michigan. Thank you all so much. Lastly, make sure to check out my website, theamericansongster.com, for my tour and project updates. Don't forget to follow me at Dom Flemons on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all of your favorite streaming platforms. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my Spotify playlists, order merch from my online store, and send me an email with all of your comments and questions to theamericansongster@gmail.com. Plus, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to WSM Radio so you can get more updates on the next episode. Well, thanks, folks. And this is Don Flemons, the American Songster, and you're listening to American Songster Radio on 650 AM, WSM in Nashville, Tennessee. Catch you all next year for Season 4.